If something's not working, you can try one of these. You can low pass it, you can high pass it, get something out of the way. You can move something to the left or right, pan it, create some exciting movement. Add a reverb, make a spatial difference, get that 3D part in your mix. Add a delay, make something pop out, come towards you. Saturate something, make it fuzzy, make it nasty. Make it something exciting that a listener could hold on to. People don't want something boring and perfect, they want something exciting. And these things will make things exciting. Hey everybody, Resident Loser Jeremy here, and today I want to talk about the quick little things that you can keep in the back of your head to make any mix that you're currently doing just a little bit better. Here we go. Tips are not meant to be deep dives. These are things to keep in the back of your head to introduce you to themes if you don't already know what they are. I'm sure I'm gonna have a lot of comments of people trying to correct me on some of these things. I'm oversimplifying issues. Of course I am. I'm trying to make them very simple because sometimes when we're all starting, we need to know what that starting point is. We don't know what we don't know, and we just need somebody to get us pointed in the right direction. So all of this is supposed to help point you in the right direction, that if you're stuck on a mix and you can't figure out why it's not working, maybe one of these things can help put it over the top, get you something good for either yourself or the client you're working with. Now before we start, these are principles. You can dive as deep into these as you want and they start to get complicated, but while I was coming up with this list, it was kind of eye-opening as far as how complicated we make the simple task of mixing. Even talking with a few different people on this, on asking them, I had my own list, but asking them what's something that you don't even think about anymore that just makes your mix better without even really trying, without putting in a whole lot of effort to it. What is something that elevates your mix? Here's that list for you guys. One of the simplest ones, but also one of the most controversial ones, is filtering. Low pass filtering and high pass filtering. So anything that you don't want to dominate the bass, you're gonna high pass that. You've heard people throw out different numbers at 90 hertz, at 125 hertz. So that's gonna be different depending on genre, depending on how much of the bass you want to dominate, if you want one thing to stand out or not. People have sent me mixes to be like, what can I do to make this better? First thing I say is you need to put some high pass filters on stuff. Now there are some YouTube channels that I've seen where people will tell you not to high pass anything, that a lot of music is lacking in that low end information. That can be true, and I do see the point. Here's the thing, if you don't know what good bass is, you don't have an understanding of what's gonna sound good in multiple locations, and your monitoring isn't absolutely perfect in your room, you're gonna wanna use high pass filters. If nothing else, it's gonna teach you what good bass is really, really quickly because it'll force you to make decisions. For example, kick drum and bass. Those cannot live in the same space at the same time. Some people fix it with side chaining, and for certain genres, that's what the listener expects. More often than not, on the things that I'm working on, I'm fixing that with a high pass filter. And also, if you're wondering why when you go to master your own stuff, you cannot get it as loud, or you feel like the energy isn't there, or when a kick drum hits, your whole mix pumps, could be because there are too many instruments trying to dominate that same space. On the opposite end of this, you have low pass filtering. The easiest way to illustrate this is with guitar. Heavily distorted guitars are infamous for just having that right at the top that you cannot fix without putting a low pass filter on. And sometimes that could go as low as 7 kilohertz, 6 kilohertz, even 5 kilohertz, depending on the guitar. There may be some guitars you don't have to do it at all. That high-end information that guitars aren't really reproducing, that's just amp hiss, it's amp. You can cut that out of your mix and leave room for the vocals, leave room for the keys, leave room for the synths, whatever that is, the cymbals. Anything that is getting in the way, this is just cutting out the stuff in instruments that don't matter to your mix. Space. Space is a huge part of a mix, and you can achieve this with the very first thing you can do, which is panning. You can use things like reverb to kind of give you a sense of a space in something. If you put a massive sounding reverb on a kick drum, that kick drum is all of a sudden super far away from everything else in the mix. And that could be a really useful tool. Putting things in different spaces, or if the vibe is right, putting it all into one space can be a really useful trick that can aid in the sense that you don't have a perfect space to be recording in. I have a studio and I do this all the time. If I want to change the vibe of my room, I can change it with reverb. In a lot of live recordings that I do, especially jazz ensembles, I like to put them in the same kind of room. So I'll put a room reverb on there just to change the vibe, and it changes the way that you perceive what's happening when things are either in the same space or they're complementing each other with different spaces. You can achieve this with delay, where a reverb will kind of smear things and make the space a little bit harder to discern. Delay can pop things out. So if you have delay on the main vocal, it can really pop things out, especially on choruses, depending on the genre. The use of panning, reverb, delay, and there's a whole lot of other things that you could do as far as like chorusing, stuff like that. Anything modulation, which would affect the space that the sound is in, will immediately elevate your mix as long as it is right for the song. All of these things have that caveat attached to it. You can't just toss all these things onto a song and expect it to be better. These are tools you can use to make your song better as long as it goes along with what the song is trying to portray. So try to look at it through that lens. You wouldn't put a cool indie acoustic song in a massive chamber orchestra reverb. It just, well, maybe that would be the perfect thing. I don't know, to each his own. The next one, and one of the biggest ones, saturation. Digital is perfect. Nobody likes perfect. Let me explain. You think about vinyl. Vinyl's made a comeback. Vinyl's made a really big comeback. And that could be because of a few things. One, the performances were better, especially when you're looking at vintage records, old records from the 70s where bands could actually play. They all got together in a room, and yes, they could knock out a song in one take and it sounded great. Sometimes the performances weren't perfect, but they were human, and that's part of what makes vinyl super cool. Even in modern music, right now, people will still pick a vinyl record over buying something off of Apple Music or listening to it on Spotify. They prefer the vinyl experience. And that's a little different because this is something that was most likely 9 times out of 10, and there still are records made on tape, but most of these records are made in something like Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, and mastered and mixed all in the box, and then they put it on vinyl. And that's probably because vinyl introduces something organic into the experience. Whether they're actually hearing a difference, that's up for debate, but there is something to say that saturation in vinyl does introduce some. I know the hi-fires, I can hear you guys commenting right now. For the average consumer that listens to vinyl, they don't have a multi-$1,000 system they're listening to it on, and this is introducing saturation right off the bat. It's taking this boring, clean, transparent thing and turning it into something organic that's easier to relate to. Saturation can look like a lot of different things. For me, in Pro Tools HD, that's heat. I love it. I love heat. My favorite tape emulator right now is Crane Song Phoenix. It's expensive. Some of the more common ones you can see are Slate Digital's VTM, which is fantastic. There are a lot of really good tape emulators out there, and they will make a big difference, especially if you put them across your entire mix. I'm not saying that's the right move, but it is something that can really glue your mix together if that's what it needs. Slate does this really well with their virtual console emulators. Waves has a ton of console emulators out there. I think the CLA Hub is one of the newer ones, but it is a different way to kind of introduce a console environment into something that's completely in the box. And that alone is telling us that saturation is important. It's important to get something imperfect into this perfect world. Cheap interfaces are very transparent, and a lot of people don't really realize that. It seems like when we start out in this world of recording, we're so worried about getting a perfect, transparent signal, but that's not what the listener likes. The listener likes something nasty, something gritty, something distorted. That's what's interesting. Transparent is boring. Saturation is something that you can go down a rabbit hole and use too much of very easily, but in a tasteful way, introduced into your song to create the right vibe, it can really improve your mix very, very quickly. Anyway, guys, I hope these help you. There's a whole lot of stuff out there that you can try to make your mix better. These are some of the ones I put together quickly that you can keep in the back of your head. If something's not working, you can try one of these. You can low pass it, you can high pass it, get something out of the way. You can move something to the left or right, pan it, create some exciting movement, add a reverb, make a spatial difference, get that 3D part in your mix. Add a delay, make something pop out, come towards you. Saturate something, make it fuzzy, make it nasty. Make it something exciting that a listener could hold on to. People don't want something boring and perfect. They want something exciting. And these things will make things exciting if you don't know what else to do with your mix. I'm Resident Loser Jeremy. Hit that like button if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. Hit the bell if you want to be notified every time I make a video. I'll see you guys in the next one.